Good morning, everyone. We're so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us today and for your interest in the 2025 James Irvine Foundation Leadership Awards. I'm Cindy Downing, and I serve as the Program Officer with the Foundation and have the distinct privilege of overseeing the Leadership Awards. We're so excited to host this informational webinar today. Our goal is to help you submit a competitive nomination for the 2025 awards. During our time together, we will first provide you with an overview of the Leadership Awards program and our team, along with the selection criteria and process. We will also share some tips for nominating a leader. Finally, the last 20 to 30 minutes of today's webinar will be reserved for your questions. If you have any questions during our presentation, please look for the Q&A tool, and we will either address them in real time or at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. Next slide, please. The James Irvine Foundation is a private nonprofit grant-making institution dedicated to expanding opportunity for the people of California. We have about 80 employees spread across the offices in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Since we were founded in 1937, the foundation has made more than $2.6 billion in grants throughout the state. In recent years, the foundation has narrowed the focus of its grant-making to achieve the singular goal of a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. In 2023 alone, we approved over $180 million in grants to 223 organizations. I'm proud of Irvine's grant-making focus, including an explicit commitment to investments that advance racial equity. And I'm particularly excited that the awards program continues. The program plays an important role in lifting up critical work and innovative models of leaders, regardless of issue area, population, sector, or region. It also helps the foundation learn about effective work taking place throughout our state, especially programs in areas outside of our core grant making that still impact the well-being of low-income Californians. The awards provide us a way to support the work of these leaders and their organizations that we may not know about or fund through our other initiatives. Next slide, please. The foundation established Leadership Awards in 2006. Each year, the awards program recognizes individuals and organizations that are confronting the state's critical challenges with innovative and effective solutions that improve people's lives and contribute to a better California. The foundation spotlights these exemplary leaders, helps share their approaches with policymakers and peers, and provides each of their organizations with a $350,000 grant and additional resources to support each leader's work. Since 2006, Irvine has recognized 123 diverse and innovative California leaders. In 2021, the foundation shifted the program's day-to-day operations by deepening our partnership with Capital Impact, a Sacramento-based consulting firm, to serve as our external manager for the Leadership Awards program. Irvine continues to fully fund and support the Leadership Awards program and is grateful to have Capital Impact in this expanded role to take the program to the next level. Speaking of Capital Impact, I would now like to introduce my colleague, Melissa Granville, who is a partner there. Melissa oversees the operations of the Leadership Awards program, and she will now walk us through the selection criteria and process. Thank you all for your attention, and Melissa, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction and overview of the awards program. Before I jump in, I wanted to just thank everyone for joining us and for submitting questions in advance. I'll do my best to address them today. But that said, please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A tool, and we will either address them in real time or at the end of the webinar. Next slide. Great. So let's talk a little bit about the selection committee and the selection timeline. So each year, an independent selection committee of California leaders identifies 4 to 6 recipients of the James Irvine Foundation Leadership Awards. These leaders are distinguished for their extensive contributions to California communities and institutions, and they work in different fields and reflect the ethnic and regional diversity of California. So you're seeing some folks here. We have a 9-person committee and are currently recruiting new members. Next slide. So what is the process for selecting these leaders? So as you know, nominations are now open for the 2025 awards, and the process really starts with amazing folks like you nominating leaders that reflect the diversity of California's populations and regions. Next slide. So after the deadline on April 26, staff will review and advance the nominations that are most aligned with the awards criteria. In late July, the selection committee will select 10 to 12 finalists who are then notified of the status of their selection. In August, once the finalists have been contacted, all nominators will be notified about the status of their nomination. And then between August and October, capital impact staff, consultants, and an expert in the finalist field of work will meet with the finalists individually to better understand their work and its impact on California. The selection committee will meet again in late October to review the learnings and findings from these site visits or meetings, and will select 4 to 6 award recipients. All finalists and recipients will be notified shortly after that decision. We anticipate announcing the 4 to 6 award recipients in February 2025, and the foundation typically spotlights these leaders and helps share their approaches with policymakers and peers through a reception in Sacramento, meetings with policymakers, and other opportunities. Next slide. Great. So who is eligible to be nominated for a leadership award? Nominated leaders must be residents of California. They can be an individual or a pair of leaders, and they can work in any sector or field. That said, most nominations are for nonprofit leaders, but that's not, it could be for public or private as well. And they can work in any field. So immigration, women's health, transportation, housing, and so on. The awards recognize notable leadership characterized by, sorry, next slide. The awards recognize notable leadership characterized by 6 different criteria. So significance, innovation, effectiveness, timing, leadership capacity, and inclusiveness. I highly encourage you to take a look at these on the website. We're going to go into some of these in quite a bit of detail today, not all of them, however. So I encourage you to take a look at the website, review these criteria, and make sure that your nominee fits. Great, next slide. Okay, so you're looking at the 2024 award recipients who are advancing solutions on a wide range of critical issues facing our state. This includes teacher preparation, youth justice, college access and completion, and ensuring the health and safety of AAPI, LGBTQ+, and refugee and immigrant populations. All of these leaders were selected because their work tightly aligns with the selection criteria. And many of these award recipients have been nominated multiple times before receiving their award. So hint, hint, if you've nominated someone before and they've not won, that doesn't mean that they're ineligible this year or shouldn't be nominated again. We encourage you to kind of update the nomination and align it with the criteria and the timeliness of their work today. So because of the maturity of their work and the current political and policy environment, the selection committee thought that these folks and their work was right to be recognized this year. Great. Next slide, please. So now we'll give a few tips for submitting a competitive nomination. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of the nominations form. So the nominations form includes 3 sections. So nominee information, nominator information, and narrative questions. Details that nominators will be asked to provide about the nominee or nominees include name and title, affiliated organization, the leader's demographics, and contact information for those leaders. Nominators will also be asked to provide their own name and title, organization as appropriate, and contact information. Nominators will also be asked to provide their own association with the organization or the leader being nominated. In the narrative section, there are 7 questions. These questions align with the selection criteria, except for one section, which requests a 200-word description of the work of the nominee's organization and the nominee's role in that work. So as we read each nomination, we assign scores based on how closely the nomination aligns with each selection criteria. This means that it's very important to use the prompts and address the criteria and specific questions that are asked in the nominations form. So I'm going to go through a few specific sections and criteria today. And again, just a reminder that we encourage you to review the selection criteria on the website as well. So the overview section is where nominators describe the work of the leader and the leader's organization. Is there a specific model or approach the nominee has developed or is advancing? If so, we recommend discussing that specific approach here and throughout the nomination. You'll note that several criteria inquire about an issue the leader is addressing or their approach. You may have gleaned that this award is as much about the work of the leader and their organization as it is about the leaders themselves. So while it is a leadership award, it is about both the leader and their work. Great. And in the significance section, this is where nominators describe the problem the leader and the organization are working to solve and why it's important to the state of California. It is also helpful to describe the population or community that is affected by the problem in this section. We recommend indicating the number of people affected now or projected to be affected in the future. For the innovation section, we consider many forms of innovation, including work that represents an entirely new approach or a creative leap from standard practices, work that is not widely known or practiced in California. This could be a traditional approach that is known in a community, but maybe not widely known outside of that community. And it could be work that applies a proven approach in a new way or within a new context. So for example, work that has been done in LA, but you're applying it in a rural area of the state of California, or a practice that has been typically approached in the education field, but now you're applying it in, or the nominee is applying it in a correction space. So a question we often ask ourselves as reviewers is whether the leader's work might serve as an informative model for other communities. Could it influence how others approach a problem? In that case, we might have evidence of innovation. In the effectiveness section, we are looking for how the leader has achieved positive change or directly improved people's lives. Has the leader made substantial progress in addressing the problem? We recommend you describe how effective the leader has been at addressing the problem you described in the summary or the significance section, so the 2 sections above it. Not just the nominee's overall effectiveness as a leader, but how will they've advanced their model and addressed a critical issue. We've recently broadened how we define and understand effectiveness, so I'm going to share a little bit more about more detail in this section. So more competitive nominations will provide tangible and measurable evidence of effectiveness, such as data from evaluations, case studies, surveys, or comparisons to similar groups. Evidence that the leader's work has inspired policy changes or changes in people's behavior can also be compelling, a compelling indicator of effectiveness. Some nominations also provide anecdotes about how the work directly impacts a community or people's lives. This is particularly true if the nominator is someone who's been a recipient of the work that the leader does, the nominee does. Others include examples that demonstrate the emotional impact of the leader's work. For example, a thought-provoking work of art that has been widely viewed or cited. All of these are considered evidence of effectiveness, and a combination of several of those factors can make an even stronger case for effectiveness. Things that maybe are less compelling are changes within the organization, like budget or staffing levels, though may not be worth noting if they may be worth noting if they far exceed expectations or connected to the leader's programmatic goals. For example, if the leader is running a workforce development program and they've doubled their staff by hiring a significant number of their clients, that might be worth noting, for example. I'm going to pause there on the specific criteria and note that we also try to step back and consider each nomination holistically. So we tend to ask ourselves 3 sets of questions, and we'll explore those now. So the first relates to diversity. Does this particular nomination diversify the nomination pool? We consider a few different factors as we think about diversity. One is the region in which the leader works, the leader's ethnic background, and other personal demographic factors. Any life experiences they may bring to their work, especially if those experiences inform how they conduct their work. The issue on which the leader works, and then their sector, public, private, nonprofit. We also look at the opportunity the leader may have to leverage an award. So how would receiving an award create new opportunities for this leader to expand their work or inform policy? Is the timing right? Is it likely to be relevant and prioritized by policymakers and peers over the next few years? Is the work ready to be replicated? And is the leader ready to take it to the next level? And would recognition or resources from this award make a difference in the leader's journey? Or is the leader's organization so large and the leader already so well known that the award wouldn't really matter? Another component of the holistic review process could be described as uniqueness. So is there an interesting story to tell? Do policymakers and peers in the leader's field know the story, leader, or approach, or would there be something new for them to learn by recognizing this leader? Has the awards program recently recognized someone doing very similar work? Great. So now I want to talk a little bit about who should nominate. So we've received several questions from you about the qualifications of the nominator, for example. Who should prepare this nomination? Really, anyone can nominate. Some think they must get a very prominent person to submit their nomination. While this is interesting and might be considered, there are lots of other types of nominators who can describe and validate a nominee's work and provide context for why it's important. The most important factor is that the nominator is well acquainted with the nominee and can describe their alignment with the award criteria. Some nominators know the nominee's policy field well and can describe how their work is different from their peers, or they might be able to identify where there's opportunity for expansion or replication. This might be a policymaker or a funder or a researcher or maybe even a board member. Others can describe how they personally or other community members have been affected by the nominee's work. This might be a client or any other community leader who has observed the nominee in action. It is required that the nominator be someone other than the nominee, so you can't nominate yourself. And the nominator cannot be a family member, and we strongly prefer that it's not a person employed by the nominee. All right, I'll share just a few more things that we've actually learned from nominators in the past. So first, on average, nominators have spent about 3 to 8 hours preparing a nomination. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about your time management in submitting a nomination. And about 60% of nominators engage their nominee as they prepared their nomination. You certainly are not required to work with the nominee, but it is an acceptable and apparently fairly common practice. All right, so I'm going to pause there and pass it over to my colleague, Sarah, to share some tips on using our new nominations form, which is hosted by Submittable.
Excellent. Good morning. Can you hit next slide? And there we go. So this year we transitioned to a new platform called Submittable that will accept and review nominations. We made this transition based on nominator feedback and hope it will create a simpler and clearer process for nominators. So I'm going to just walk through a few key improvements to this through this system. Includes that it's easy to use. You'll be able to check the status of your nomination, and you can interact with our team through the platform after you submit if you have questions. So first, this is the when you're on our website and you go to start a nomination, there'll be a button that says like to go to submittable nomination. So you'll be prompted to go to this page, and then you'll see here you can either sign up or sign in. So you'll be asked to create a login to verify your email. And this process just helps us make sure we have the right email for you on file and so that you receive notifications from us. If you already have a submittable account, you may have one from a prior nomination or a grant application you've done for another organization. And if you have that login, you should be able to use it here. Next slide. Once you log in, this is what the top of the nominations form looks like. And one thing that's different this year is the whole form is a single page. So you can see just when you click through all of the questions that will be asked and what the whole form looks like. And as you go, one of the benefits of this feature is because you're logged in, it will save as you go. So you don't risk losing any work. It will be constantly saving you a draft. If you prefer, you can also work in a Word document. You can see at the top there, we have a Word document linked that you can download if you're collaborating with other people or you're just more comfortable editing and drafting in Word, you can do that there. And then when you're ready to submit, just come back here and copy and paste into the form. Next slide. Here in the narrative questions, you'll see one new feature this year is we have rich text formatting. So you can bold, use italics, underline, bullets, numbers. So we hope that that will help or may be useful to you as you lay out the information and you're making your nomination, drafting your nomination. You note that the system also allows you to create hyperlinks, but we recommend not using that feature because any linked materials will not be reviewed. Just for a fair and equitable review process, the selection committee will only read the text within the nomination and within those word counts. Next slide. After you submit, you'll be able to log in and see this page that says my submissions. This one has 2 submissions made to the 2025 awards. And here you can click and you can see received, or if it were accepted, it would say accepted. Most of the nominations are going to say received and will be under review until August. So you can always check and see that it's still in that received mode until the top 12 are selected and contacted. And at that time, when the top 12 are selected, as Melissa said, we'll send an email out to all nominators about the status of their nomination. And if you miss that email in your inbox, you'll also be able to see it here. So if you go to the next slide, if you click on your nomination, you'll reach this area that has activity about your nomination. And so there is the confirmation email that was sent to you. You'll also get it to your email, but a copy of it is here so you can see a log of the different emails. And any other emails that come during this process, you will see a copy of them here. So if you're not sure you missed it, you can check there. And on this form, you can also click over to messages. If you go to the next slide. The messages tab allows you to draft a message to us, to the Leadership Awards team. If you have any questions about your nomination or anything about the process, and we can reply. All correspondence in here, our team and you will receive email notifications about it, but then it will also show up here as a log in that activity log. This messaging correspondence is a key feature we're excited to introduce this year based on your feedback. We've heard from nominators that our prior email system sometimes experienced glitches or people didn't receive updates. So we understand that was frustrating, and we're excited for this system to solve for that and provide you the information along the timeline we've laid out. One important thing to note, you can add a second nominator in the process of submitting a nomination, but only the person whose account is the one like hitting submit is who will receive these messages and see this correspondence. So the nominee will not receive information from us unless they're selected as the top 12, and also secondary nominators will also not receive these messages. And as you go, there's we're available to all of you with questions about the nominations process, either technical or about the program. And then also Submittable themselves, the Submittable platform has technical support that's available to nominators. So that's not the Leadership Awards team, but they're available and their support system to answer any technical questions if you'd rather reach out to them. Prior to submitting a nomination, this messaging system will not be available to you until after you hit submit. So if you have any questions before submitting, you can just email us at hello@urbanawards.org. So I'll kick it back to Melissa to facilitate Q&A.
Great. So just as a reminder, you can put any questions into the Q&A feature and we'll address them. We've already addressed a few questions in the Q&A via text, so I would review those. We'll also send these out via email, and yes, this will be recorded as well, so we'll be able to share that. I'm going to go ahead and start addressing one question, which is, if an award has been given to someone in the past and a new nominee happens to be from the same organization, will they still be considered? The old award recipient is no longer at the organization. So the short answer is it depends. So if it were entirely new stream of work, for example, or, we've had, organizations be nominated before, like UC San Diego, right? And UC San Diego is very large and has different components of the work that are very distinct from one another. So it's not, it wouldn't be disqualifying to have someone be submitted, a new leader be submitted for that organization. However, it's unlikely that a leader would be selected if they are from an organization that is doing similar work to the recipient that was selected prior. Cindy and Sarah, feel free to chime in as well.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I agree that nominating a leader from the same organization it would be challenging to produce a strong nomination and have, unless you're able to make a compelling case for the uniqueness of the work, and potentially there's a timing element or an innovation that's different from the previous recipient, but it would have to be pretty distinct in order for it to be a competitive nomination.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, another question is, do elected officials ever advise on behalf of their constituents in CBOs? I'm gonna interpret this question in two different ways. One, can an elected official be nominated? The answer is yes. However, typically in the past, award recipients have been elected officials and a nonprofit leader that are working together on a project. And the nonprofit would receive the funds of the award, but the elected official and the nonprofit leader working together would receive the recognition. We also have nominators that are elected officials who nominate leaders often. Hopefully I'm interpreting that question accurately. I heard that another question is, I heard the nominator should not work for the nominee. We strongly encourage you to nominate someone that is not in your organization. That's correct. I think we want this to be an opportunity to provide third-party kind of understanding of the work. Certainly the nominee or the nominator can work with the nominee or with the organization to prepare the nomination, because we understand there are some details and data that you might not have as a community leader or a constituent, that you might need to get from the organization. But we encourage folks to not be employed by the nominee. Okay. If we are nominating a nonprofit leader who has multiple programs, is it better to focus primarily on one of their programs or include all of them with the unifying factor being the target population? We do not have a preference on that. We certainly have a lot of award recipients in the past who run multiple programs. I think it's up to you as a nominator to decide what you believe is the most innovative component of their work, and innovative and effective component of their work, and focus on that. Whether that's the breadth of the work or a particular program is dependent upon your perspective as a nominator.
I can chime in on that one too.
Sure.
Just as far as the general tip for that case, and also to answer the kind of common pitfalls question. For that nomination or similar, we recommend having like a common thread to go throughout the nomination. So what you talk about in your innovation should also be the programs that you talk about in your effectiveness. So if you were doing that, you just wouldn't want to like talk about the workforce development in the innovation and then provide a bunch of information about the housing and the effectiveness. Like we want to see if you talk about all of them, have that common thread go through the full nomination, if that makes sense.
Okay. Can you give more clarity on not nominating someone within the nominator's organization? Can we nominate someone in our organization that does not employ us and that we don't work under? Yes, you can nominate someone with your organization. We just believe that it's a missed opportunity to not have a recipient or a community leader or an external validator of the nominee to nominate, but it's not disqualifying to have someone nominate from within the organization. Certainly board members nominate often, as an example. Okay, can the same nominee be awarded twice if they work at a different CBO? Cindy, I'm going to defer to you on this one. My gut is no.
And as usual, your gut is right that unfortunately would not recognize a leader twice.
Thank you. Okay. I want to go back to a question that someone asked in the chat that I responded to directly, which is, can nominees receive feedback on their applications, whether selected or not? What are the common pitfalls in the nominations process and how can they be avoided? So we're going through a lot of the pitfalls today about the nominations process and how those can be avoided, or tips if thought about on the other side. On the feedback side, we have a longstanding practice to maintain fairness. So we do not provide individual feedback on nominations. However, if you have nominated in the past, we've sent some general feedback via email to the nominators last year, for example, and the year before, that include the tips, a lot of which we're going through today, of things to do to strengthen your nomination. So we encourage you to go back and refer to that email, or just refer, a lot of the tips we're going through today. So you don't have to go check out that email if you don't want to. All right, any other questions? All right. we got one question in advance that I want to address to you around timing. So one of the questions was, is there a particular sector of interest for 2024 given the upcoming election cycle? So just as a reminder that this award is for 2025, and we're thinking in like the short term of the next couple of years. So we don't have a particular interest in a particular sector or issue area. However, you should think about what's going on in the political or environmental space to understand how to write your nomination, because the timing is an important aspect of this award. And they will be selected in mind with them being announced in 2025. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about timing. And then another question that came up in the pre-submitted questions was what nonprofit role should be nominated. So typically executive directors, founders, more senior roles within the organization who have the capacity to direct the future of the program or the project are nominated. We've also seen in larger organizations like program directors be nominated who, one example of this is Yamilet Rodriguez, Youth Leadership Institute. She oversees a specific region of a larger statewide organization. So it's not always executive directors, founders, and folks at that level, but also program directors and others who have leadership roles or capacity to direct the project or program. And one question we got is, we are not able to nominate trios, correct? That is correct. So pairs of leaders or individuals. Okay. Any other questions? Going once? I'm seeing for Higher Education Institute, is this nomination for non-STEM, excluding engineering and science? I'm going to interpret that as if you want to submit a nomination for a leader that's in higher education, it could be STEM or otherwise. There is no preference on the approach. It would just, we would evaluate it based on its innovation, effectiveness, timeliness, etc. We also got a question about, will there be additional information sessions? This is our only information session. We will, this is recorded. We'll put this on the website. And there's plenty of information on the website that we've covered today and maybe some things that we haven't covered today. There's an FAQ section that we would highly recommend checking out. And then of course, the nominations page has details about the selection criteria and some additional tips for strengthening your nomination. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to our team.
I see that there's a question about, are there specific geographic areas within California that the foundation is focusing on? There are within the initiatives of the Irvine's grant-making initiatives, but the great thing about the Leadership Awards is that we cover all of the state, so no specific regions that we would focus on more than any other, just as long as the nomination and the leader's work is effective, innovative, is needed, and is timely. So all regions we're interested in supporting leaders from all the regions.
We, to build off of that, we have received fewer nominations for areas outside of LA and San Francisco. So we would really encourage folks to, who know nominees in those areas, to nominate. That doesn't mean that they're going to be, necessarily weighed heavier than others, but that's we would really love to see more nominations reflect the diversity of the state and not just, leaders who are only based in LA and San Francisco.
Thanks, Melissa. That's important point.
Okay, we are interested in nominating a leader in the economic development field for this cycle. Was someone selected under the similar field in the last cycle? I would encourage you to take a look at the award recipients from last cycle. It just depends on the approach. If the approach is very similar to a recent recipient in the last couple of cycles, they're less likely to be, it would be less competitive. It's hard for me to kind of address based on a high level economic development, but just take a look at the 2024 and 2023 award recipients and see if the approach is that the nominee is advancing is very similar to one of theirs. Yeah, so will you provide the main email contact information of Capital Impact or the Irvine Foundation? Our team, the Leadership Boards team, frequently addresses questions in the hello@irvineawards.org account. So we'll put that in the chat. You can also contact us via the Submittable app or tool. And we generally respond within 24 hours. So one of us will. Yeah. So hello@irvineawards.org. Great. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and just say, thank you so much for joining today and your interest in the Leadership Awards program. We literally could not do this without you, nominators who are really tapped into the community and understand and know what leadership looks like. So thank you in advance for considering nominating someone. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team and we'll address your questions as quickly as possible. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. We're excited to read your nominations.